everyone, welcome to the Game Dev Show. This week we're going to be talking about a bunch of really exciting topics, including a new terrain system that allows you to do massive terrains that are just enormous and run about 10 times faster than you're used to, with a bunch of really cool features like just hitting a button to pop a dungeon into them. We're going to get into a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons consoles for your game, talk a little bit about board games as well, and some alternate revenue sources that you can use as a game developer. And we're going to also include a little bit of the spring sale stuff, since a couple of the guys have things on the spring sale. Speaking of, since this episode's a little bit different and not live, we're going to do the giveaway here a little bit different too. Andrew decided to offer up any one of his character assets to a random listener who just comments down below which one they want. We'll pick it at random from all the commenters down below, and if you're the winner, then you'll get the one that you commented. So go drop a comment, let us know which one you want. I'll put a link down below so you can see them all. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and all that stuff. And let's get started with the show. Well, let's start with Greg's story then. So Greg was just telling us about how he's making some nice passive income and it's growing and quadrupling, and Andrew was saying maybe getting up to $1 billion. We just need to double that many more times. But can you tell this story again? What's going on?
Yeah, so the Legends of Learning game, the educational game that's on their platform, which is nice for me because I don't have to do anything to publish it or market it or anything. It's just teachers assign it to their students, and I get some revenue based on how much playtime the game gets. And the first quarter, I didn't have it in there the entire quarter, so it wasn't very much. It doubled for Q4 of last year, and I just got the earnings report for Q1, and it was double what it was in Q4. So they did say that at the end of the year last year, revenues were down overall for pretty much everybody. So I think maybe just things are picking up overall. But because that's doing pretty well for me, I think I'm going to try and make another game for Legends of Learning. And so I used ChatGPT to scrape their learning objectives spreadsheet, which has all the different learning objectives and for what different grade levels and subjects and things. But it also shows what games already exist for each of them. And I think there can be up to 5 games per learning objective. And it also shows how much playtime each of those categories have gotten. So I basically had ChatGPT give me the top 5 learning objectives with available slots sorted from highest to lowest by earning potential. And the number 1 was eclipses and seasons. So it's a pretty simple, for lower grades. And I've been using Gemini to actually help me brainstorm game ideas. I gave them the document with all the specs for that learning objective, what it is you're trying to teach. And I also told it to take into account that we're using Unity. It's going to be a WebGL build that has to be less than 30 megabytes and run well on low-end Chromebooks. And so it gave me 5 game ideas. And so I, looked them over, and then I took one of them, and I've just been kind of brainstorming ways to turn that game idea into a game, and what are some mini games or some ways you can progress through progressively more complex levels and stuff. And I have a pretty decent rough idea now, and so I've been using Gemini to help me write a game design document using my existing game design document for my first game, Math Munchies Mayhem, as a guide, and also their sample GDD template that they give you.
Nice. So this will be the new game, this Eclipse one, and you've got the idea all there and just got to build it out and make it fun. And can you tell everybody what the first one was, the one that's been already generating revenue and doubling and doubling?
Yeah, Math Munchies Mayhem. It's basic multiplication and division for like 4th grade. And it's inspired by an arcade game I played back when I was poor and didn't have a washer and dryer, and we'd had to go to a laundromat. And they had this game called Stomp It, I think it was called, where it's kind of like Dance Dance Revolution, where you have a pad that you stomp on. There's like 9 tiles. But on the screen in front of you was like a platter of food, and these bugs would come crawling in from all directions, and you had to stomp on them to kill them before they got the food. And so my game is basically there's critters coming in to steal cookies and stuff, and they have equations over them. and you have to, for whatever the active critter is, you have to pick the right answer. And it's, multiplication and division. So it's basically like 3 times x equals 9, or 27 divided by 9 equals x.
And they just pick the right one and progress. And then that all ties in with their system, right? So that the kids are learning the right types of things.
Right, and they can change the fact families and stuff and see, how multiplication and division are related. So they can look at it multiple ways. And then if they answer correctly, the number they chose I use those tune numbers that I actually found out from you. The animated tune number comes down and chases the critter off, because you're not allowed to kill anything in Legends of Learning.
Yeah, that makes
Seems
sense.
fair. Yeah.
Games.
And it just gets progressively faster and faster, and you get more and more critters.
That's really cool, man. I'm really impressed just building a nice little web game, having a platform to push it out to, and then it just generating money. But I feel like that's maybe that's something we should talk about a little bit, just platforms for pushing out and things and making money, because that's one of them at Legends of Learning. I was just telling Andrew that the other Andrew I introduced him to at GDC is doing something similar, where they're building, him and a partner building games that are going out to Pokey and Crazy Games and web platforms that are basically free to play web games, but they can generate a decent amount of revenue just off of the ads from those games, which was really surprising to me when I started kind of learning a little bit more about it. And then, I mean, Andrew, I would mention the asset store too, right? Like just having a marketplace where stuff sells and sells relatively regular. Speaking of which, you've got some stuff on the spring sale right now, right, Andrew?
Yes, depending on when this video comes out, we've got the first flash deal starts on the 20th. That's Sunday the 20th in, I don't know, Pacific time, Eastern time, America's time, somewhere in the Americas. 70% off the low poly monster bundle number 1. And then in just a few days after that is the 70% off for the low poly monster bundle number 2. And then in early May, there will be 70% off the game modules 4 package.
So you tell everybody what the game modules is, by the way, 'cause I feel like it's one of those that's a little bit ambiguous. People might, when you say game modules, it could be just about anything. And I've looked into it, but for anybody who hasn't, just a quick overview.
So it at its very core, it's basically data management for your games. It's meant to be used for bigger games. If it's overkill for just a simple game, so keep that in mind. Not to undersell myself here, but if you're making a simple game, probably just make a simple game. But for more complex games where you really want interaction between different NPCs and player characters and objects and quests and stats and all these other things, that can get very complicated very fast. And when I'm working on my own RPG, that's basically why I started this. It starts with a stat system. Stats are just things you want to keep track of. It doesn't have to be might and hit points. It can be, of course, but it can also be gold or experience or just some hidden number that you want to keep track of, how many times the players killed something, things like that. And then there's the other modules are things like items, which is a combination of item objects and item attributes. So you can create a gold sword of power that when you equip it, automatically adjust the stats of the character that has the thing equipped. So that's what it does. It also has a save and load system. It has a quest system. It has conditions. It's all automated as much as possible so that once it's set up, you can just play the game and the stats get updated, conditions get removed, new conditions are added if needs be. There's a whole lot of options there. It's very flexible and powerful. And the real intent here is that it isn't designed to make you make a game any one way, shape, or form. So I'm making a first-person party-based RPG, but game modules works for any game. It could work for a Mario Kart game. It could work for a side-scroller. It could work for any kind of game you want. And that was the other big key aspect is, there's some great RPG templates on the asset store. And what I found when I used those for my own game earlier on is that if I wanted to make the game I wanted to make, then I would have to modify those templates. And I didn't want to do that because once you start modifying the templates, it risks breaking. You have to work around problems rather than solving known problems. It's tedious. So I designed game modules to be so flexible that you can use it in any kind of project. It doesn't matter what kind of RPG you're making. It doesn't matter if you're making an RPG. Doesn't matter. Like quests can be anything you want them to be, but they are things that complete automatically and then do a thing after that. You can also extend every single one of these to make your own custom versions of everything. So if you want to customize it, you absolutely can do that. So it's very flexible. Data management, has a save and load system. It works well, and it's mostly automated once you got it set up.
It's a good overview. It covers a lot. I mean, it really does do a lot, though. I mean, you built it for your game that you're putting together, and the main point I wanted to bring it up is because I think it's interesting to set up these alternative revenue streams, especially while you're making your own indie games.
Yeah.
If you can make some money off of the things that you're building along the way, it helps to just kind of fund those. And I've seen a ridiculous number of developers who've done that. A lot of the really cool tools on the asset store actually came from somebody building a game and then building a tool around it and then realizing, oh, a lot more people probably even want this tool than want my game a lot of the time because we're engineers and we make cool code and cool tools, but not always great game designs. I don't know. Some of us do, not me.
Yeah. Well, and games are hard, and nothing's that easy in the end. None of these passive income things are so easy where you just make it and suddenly you're making $1,000 a month for no work. Asset Store, you still have to maintain things and support things, reply to reviews. For Legends of Learning, there might be some maintenance there, and there's growth that happens over time. It's not turn it on and it's suddenly making a lot of money. Sure, there's going to be the Flappy Birds of the world, but in most cases, it does require work. But yeah, absolutely, I think the word passive income is music to my ears. Always has been, and I know that's why I started. Like I wanted to make a game. Now it's been 13 years since I started, making games in Unity and using stuff from the Asset Store. At some point, I said, I want stuff I want for my game. The Asset Store doesn't currently have it. I want more customization. So I started creating artwork and putting it up there to pay back the money that I was spending on the artists. So, makes sense.
Something else I thought of when you were talking about you don't want to modify other people's assets. Another problem with that is that you can't upgrade easily because you've made changes to their stuff. Now, if you pull up an upgrade, you're going to blow away your changes.
Yep. There's a lot of risk involved. Even with extending the game modules, Game Modules 4 was a breaking change from Game Modules 3. And if Game Modules 5 ever comes out, that will probably be a breaking change from Game Modules 4. But there's always risks involved in updating them. But yeah, if you're changing the code, you're gonna overwrite all your changes accidentally one day. And if you're not backing things up properly or you don't realize what you did right away, it can cause a lot of headaches. So hopefully more assets are developed in ways that make them extensible so that you can create your own custom classes that derive from the main classes and they will still work, but with custom logic. That I think makes assets even more powerful.
I wanted to ask you something, because I know you plug Quantum Console. I have an issue where if I open up, in Highland Panic, I put an option where if I log in as a particular user, it will enable Quantum Console for me. So it's kind of like a backdoor for me to get in there and use Quantum Console to debug things. If I for some reason on the iPhone now, whenever I launch it, that blows up. I mean, it just crashes. And I was able to, using Backtrace or even just, Unity will log your crashes. I was able to determine that it was crashing because of Quantum Console. And I'm trying to remember, it had something to do with something not being encrypted or being encrypted or something. I can't remember now the specifics, but have you ever run into anything like that on like an iOS build?
I haven't yet. No, I've used it on iOS and Android quite a few times. The only time I ever ran into an issue was when I was forgotten. I swapped the instance, the singleton option off and started trying to reference it. Have you tried using Proxima to debug it though when it's on device? Just get it on there, kick up
Not
Proxima
yet.
and then see what the state is?
Next time I do a build, I'm going to try using that.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be the way that I would go. I've been using that a lot lately just to debug stuff, and it's almost always the fastest way because I don't have to go look at logs. I just hit the button, see the thing right up there, and I've gotten so used to just typing in the little extra link there to add it. I actually have a bookmark now to hit my phone. But yeah, I would try that. I haven't run into that problem though, but I have used the console a lot. Andrew, have you actually added a console to your game yet?
I have not. No.
Okay, you've got to just grab this one and just pull it in and try it out. You're gonna love that you did because it's just nice. Like, you really don't have to do any work. I mean, other than obviously Greg's debugging, he's gonna have to do. But assuming you don't have to do any debugging and you just have a single startup point where you can just drop the singleton in there, you basically just get a console that has a bunch of built-in stuff. So if you just want to like load a scene or do something to an object, you can. But you just add the command attribute over any method, and then it will run on either every instance of it, or if you make it static, it'll just run like once for that
nice.
method. So then you can call a thing that just runs once or one that runs on every object. It does autocomplete of like the search data. So if you want to give yourself an item, you can just give it the collection of possible results, and then it will autocomplete that. And it's a simple attribute. It's really cool. And I mean, I feel like every game should pretty much have a console. It's been around since, old school, so ever since Carmack invented them in the old days, and I don't know why people would not just drop one in, especially when it's no work.
Okay, I'll give it a try.
So how's the Trolls game going?
It's coming well. So after GDC, got a lot of feedback. So I redesigned all the cards. Basically, I added what I hope to be decent colorblind UI, so that things are, the colors are there, but there's also some design changes and sort of shading and patterns that can help it be more colorblind friendly. Especially since
useful tip for game devs too, just remembering that some people are colorblind, and having everything the same exact shape and just different shades isn't a good idea.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head what the common ones are, but it's something like 15% of the population. And it's apparently more prevalent in males than females, so that's interesting too. I have no idea why, but
because they stare at the sun.
maybe could be. But either way, so that version, I have a prototype being printed. I just got to shipping notes today, so it will be shipped hopefully tomorrow or the next day. I guess tomorrow is Sunday, so maybe I don't know when it will be shipped, but should be here fairly soon, maybe in a week or so. And then I'll be able to test that out. It has new rules, slightly changed from the original based on the feedback. I'll be testing that with the friends and family, probably going to a game dev group and testing it with blind people, not blind people, but blind testing with people. It's not friendly to actually sight blinded people, unfortunately.
I would imagine most board games aren't. It would be a difficult one. Probably a couple out there, but
yeah, that would be difficult. So yeah, that's where it is now. If this works well, and I suspect it will get, it got really good feedback at GDC. This builds on that and corrects a couple of the things that people did have, not criticism, but criticism of. And then I'll be sending it off to maybe a publisher or two that I know and seeing what they think, and deciding what to do from there.
And then we'll make the digital game on stream.
And we can make the digital version on stream, yes.
Well, yeah, congratulations. I'm really excited to see this thing. I want to get my hands on a copy of it. So
yeah. If this one works, then I'll be getting your address again so I can send it to you.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I want it too.
Okay. I'll get all your addresses.
Our family plays a lot of board games. So
I see
lately
that.
we've been playing an old school game called Talisman. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of that. I've heard of it. I don't know much about it though.
It's kind of a D&D themed board game where you're trying to get to what's called the Crown of Command so you can kill everybody else. But every space you land on, you basically draw some kind of encounter card, and it could be something to fight, or it could be some treasure, or some kind of an item. Just fantasy D&D type.
I like that. I like fantasy.
Well, speaking of D&D, Greg, I've actually got a question for you. I know you play a decent amount. How have the digital versions come along? I see these constant posts, but I don't actually get to play. So I'm really curious what that ecosystem has been like and how it's changing. I know there were a bunch of competitors in there all trying to make their own kind of like tabletop digital versions. Yeah, can you just update on that?
Yeah. So I used Roll20 for years. I still have a pro subscription with it, but I switched over to Foundry a year or so ago. Everything just seems a lot better in Foundry, and it's all JavaScript, so it's like really easy to write, custom scripts and things for it. And there's so much community support for it. So you can get all kind of mods for Foundry just from the community that really improve your quality of life, like automatic things like, setting inspiration, like using inspiration. So the next time you attack, you have advantage or something, or, a paladin gets a certain number of divine smites. And I mean, to track all this stuff for you. D&D Beyond, Wizards was working on their own VTT. And then they recently announced they laid off almost the entire team, like 90% of the team. And they're not even sure they're going to support it anymore. I mean, further than where it already, apparently the rollout, the initial beta or whatever was not very well received. I think it just wasn't as fully featured as people want it. And I haven't tried it yet, so I can't really comment personally, but there were some scathing YouTube videos about it. And then I did hear that like 90% of that team was let go.
Oh,
So-
interesting. I didn't know that. I knew there was stuff going on, but I didn't know that was going on. I actually met one of the developers at GDC last year, so that's a shame. Well, hopefully they're refocused and putting it into something else really cool. I know, like on the Magic the Gathering side, they're doing some really cool stuff, and they mentioned some stuff about doing. Sounds like Commander, at least from the posts that I saw, having like multiplayer beyond just 2-player modes, which will be great. Like I'm still a big addict. I was literally playing this morning. The drafts are a blast, and I'm actually probably going to end up going to MagicCon in Vegas this year. I think it's the plan. Get my kid to
Nice.
come out with me. I can drag him along, and then there's a couple guys I know that go out there too. One coming hopefully from Canada. If you're watching, Julian, let's go. But yeah, I think it'll be fun. And I just really like card games on here. And your Trolls game made me think of it. So I was thinking like, hey, we could easily make turn your Trolls card game into something digital, like with just the group of us over a weekend or something. We could do like a hackathon and put it together. We could even use like I know there's that CCG kid I've played with a couple times and made a couple things with. Who probably just use that and slap it together in a weekend, and you have a digital version that comes free with the board game or something.
Or paid.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, so the two things on the paid aspect. It is a thing. Like digital board games are a thing. I've only played a couple, but they're out there. It's something like Gloomhaven. It's actually, I don't know if you can see it in this view, but right behind me is Gloomhaven, and that game is in my opinion better as a computer game, because I believe it the board game, the tabletop version, feels like a tabletop version of a computer game rather than the computer game being a computer version of a tabletop game. But it makes so there's money to be made, from that, where it could be that given just more people can easily buy it for 99 cents or whatever, you could easily make more from that than you can from the print version. Plus, the print version will take who knows how long to actually get published and all that. The other aspect is when you make a digital version of a tabletop game, is it something that where you want like the fake tabletop experience? Like there are things like Tabletop Simulator and others that here's your cards and you put them on the table, the digital table. Or do you build an app that is essentially streamlined for the digital experience where there's no table? What you have is a better UX of the information you need. And that's just an interesting thing. I don't know if either of you have thoughts on that, but I often wonder, like, is there a better option between those two?
I think it might depend on whether it's mobile or desktop, partly. I think desktop, maybe more of a faux tabletop experience might be better, but on a mobile, there's just not enough real estate, really.
Yeah, on mobile, I prefer it to just fit and fit well and then have some nice animations. I don't need to see the bottom of the card or whatever else. Like if it's cut
Yeah.
off, it's fine. I don't need to see the whole surroundings. Just the pieces that work are the important parts. And then you use some special graphics for things. I don't want to see a bunch of tokens lined up on the board. I'd way rather see a UI element for things that are important where it's
Yeah.
hard to see. You know, if I had to look at a little 20-sided die or 20 little counters versus just their life on the top or whatever, I think it would be frustrating. But
Yep.
yeah, I'm excited about this now. I think we should do a hackathon, and as soon as your game is ready, just make a digital version of it. Because I feel like if we just got the group on, we could easily tear through it in a weekend, and it would be a fun thing. We maybe even do it on a stream.
Could do. Yeah.
All right, guys, thanks. We're going to bring in Adam now to talk about Gaia and Storm and it's a crazy new terrain system. I think, Andrew, you've seen it, right? You've seen a preview?
I have. Yeah, Adam, I met him at GDC this year, and it's very impressive. I'm impressed.
Yeah, Greg, you're going to want to see this. It is kind of blew me away, the performance improvement from just hitting a checkbox is the kind of thing I like to see. So I'm going to bring in Adam next. All right, I'm going to bring in Adam. Thanks again, Adam, for coming and joining us today. I'm really excited to talk about the stuff that you have out now and the new technology that I think is really going to blow everybody away.
Okay, hey Jason, how's it going? It's nice to see you again. It's been a while. No, actually not that long, just GDC.
Couple weeks.
Yeah. Seems like a long time. Yeah, we specialize in procedural world building tools, and we've got something like 30 different assets in the asset store. Most people know us for Gaia. We've also got Gaia's kind of like world building at scale. Then we've got another tool called Gina, which is really kind of like the fine touching brush. It's paintable world building. GTS, which is a really cool terrain shader, a sound system, a whole bunch of different stuff. And actually we're on sale at the moment. So got a particularly awesome deal, which is our world building bundle, which is essentially 6 of our best assets all in one product. And it's kind of everything you need to build stuff and make it run well and make it look pretty.
Yeah, you've got a lot of tools out there. And just for anybody who hasn't seen Gaia before we get into the crazy new stuff, can you just tell them exactly what Gaia is, how it works, and how they can use it, or where they would use it if they were going to build, or what type of games it would fit into?
Yeah. So Gaia is kind of the first thing you open when you go to create a game in Unity that's set in a 3D environment. So basically it's kind of wizard driven. You tell Gaia, I want this type of terrain, and then Gaia will go and create that for you and procedurally texture it. And then you say, okay, I want this type of biome on there, and you click the button and it'll go and do that for you. And it kind of then, the other thing it does, and it's more for convenience, you don't need to do this, but it'll also add in your lighting, your water, and all the other kind of tedious stuff, which you have to mess around with a bit in Unity to make it work nicely. And I guess the other final thing is Gaia's built with scale in mind. So we have, people building 20, 30, 40 kilometer square environments with Gaia. So it builds in streaming and all that sort of stuff as well. Gaia is the most popular world building tool ever in the asset store. And I guess, when you first start with Unity, Gaia is one of those first things you drop into your scene because it gives you a starting point. And actually, how I came to the approach is I was talking to a teacher once, teaching game development, and the teacher commented that a lot of people only do 2D when they start because they find 3D overwhelming. So the idea behind Gaia and the Wizard is it's easy as 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I feel like most people start with like a demo scene. They'll do a little bit of world building and then just go back to a demo scene and be done. At least the programmer side, it's very difficult. Some designers great and really love going in and level building. I personally like the procedural setup where I can give it the general idea of what I want, hit the button a couple times until I get something close, and then go fine tune it or give it to a designer afterwards to go in and tweak. And you mentioned the scale for Gaia. Can you just talk a little bit about how that performs and what you do to make it run well at large scales?
Sure. So one of the things we set out to do with Gaia is to not be opinionated. So what that means is we don't have much in there in the way of acceleration tools. We basically are vanilla Unity, but we do some things for you. So when you're doing a large world, Gaia will manage the streaming, and it does it at a terrain tile level. And when you're streaming worlds in, it'll actually optimize the order in which things are loaded in and out of memory. And then the other thing we have built into it is a layer-based culling system. So you can go, grass is going to be on a fairly close, tight budget, and then bigger objects further out. And the combination of layer-based culling and then optimize streaming, I think, is two of the things we do. The other thing we do with Gaia is, if you've, as you know, when you do large worlds in Unity terrain system is very heavy. So we have a imposter baking system where we can actually take a terrain and just build a kind of a low poly mesh, a decimated mesh from that terrain, and we bake the textures in and so on. And actually, I'll demonstrate that to you when I showcase Storm, because I'll start with a Gaia world a bit later, and I'll show you these imposter. And it's actually surprising. One of the things I often do when I'm making a world with Gaia is I go into the island view, because then you don't have any funny cut-offs where the world ends. It goes down to ocean. So one of the little tip is, if you are building something like that, build some imposter terrains and put them in the distance, and then use a bit of fog and stuff, and it really creates a sense of space.
Nice, that's a good idea. And I mean, it sounds like automatically doing it, so it's even better in that setup. And you mentioned Storm a little bit, and I think that's what everybody is here to kind of hear about. So why don't we just kind of jump into it and give everybody an overview of what Storm is, why everybody that's seen it is so impressed with it, and maybe why you built it.
Sure. So Storm is a render acceleration and procedural content creation for Unity. And there are a couple of reasons why we built it. First of all, it's, when you start to scale Unity up, it does struggle from a performance perspective. And I love rich, dense scenes. I love to be surrounded by forest and so on. So we wanted to make Unity run faster and showcase the amazing visuals you can get with Unity. But the other thing we did with Storm is, I love, if you look at the environment behind me in my image on the screen here, you've got a road heading up to the mountains. So the built environment, you see man-made lines and so on, it just adds a story to the environment. So Storm is not just about beautiful natural environments and acceleration, but it's also about built environments. So we've got a building generator, a city generator, and a dungeon generator built into it. And I love playing games where you just wander around and, hack and slash your way through thousands of enemies. So that's kind of the reason behind it, is building stuff that runs great across at scale and across platforms.
So you talked about running great, but I don't think that really does it justice. When you talk about the performance a little bit, what the differences are, and whenever you're ready, you can show some demos too of maybe the before and after and see what it looks like. And again, it is really impressive, and everybody that I know that's seen it was kind of blown away. So hopefully you're blown away watching this now.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So we showcased early version of Storm at Unite a couple of years ago, and then we showcased a later version at GDC last year, and then the most recent GDC we showcased the latest version. And we have a low poly scene, kind of like what you would do in mobile, made with Cinti assets. And This scene, it's 2 kilometers square, and Unity runs it at about 26 frames a second, and it's just the overhead of managing all that data as much as anything else. A year ago, Storm ran that at 147 frames a second, and then at GDC, it ran it at 247. I'm going to show that to you. So that's kind of, on the mobile thing. In fact, we're optimizing for mobile at the moment. And again, a dense mobile scene running at about 15 frames a second on your phone, going up to about 70 frames a second. So that ability to do richer, nicer environments, I think, builds the immersiveness of your game and increases your sales. So would you like to see it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, let's show everybody this 10x improvement and see what it looks like.
Yeah, and look, 10x is kind of a big claim. So
On the stream, at least.
it is scene dependent, but in a lot of scenes, it's rare that you won't get a nice performance improvement. So is that my screen coming up now? All right, so here I have some quick demos, and what I'm going to do, and it's kind of good to show this in a build because we actually double our performance again in a build as compared to the editor. So here I am loading up a little test project, and we've got a low poly world, which Unity is just currently loading in. There's some really beautiful Cinti assets. This is actually all built procedurally, by the way. I gave one of our tools to a level designer, and it took him a week to get his head around it, but then he was able to create infinite cities, which is particularly cool. So you can see my screen here that's drawing a lot of content, and we're not really getting much of a frame rate, 22 frames a second. And by the way, we have already done layer-based culling and a bunch of stuff here to optimize it. So now I'm going to switch to Storm. And the first thing you might notice is it actually loads extremely quickly, and boom, I'm now getting 180 frames a second. So I've gone from 22 to 180. And if I wasn't streaming this, it would be sitting at 240. So what's kind of interesting about this, and one of the things that we've always tried to build with our tools, is kind of like a what you see is what you get. So I can go into this and I can actually modify what we're doing with our environment. So I can go, you know what, let's bring those large objects in. You can see me bringing them in, because you might not be up in the sky here, you might be kind of down and you don't need that massive draw distance. And then I can maybe bring the grass in and the details in, maybe the small objects in, a bit hard to see here. But you can actually tweak everything at runtime. And that's, I think, a very powerful thing. If you're switching around from different scenes in your game, from the top down or in the distance, you've got that ability to do that. And you can kind of tweak this stuff for what you're trying to achieve in your game. So that was kind of a, massive improvement. And I am drawing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that was literally a 10x improvement.
Yeah, I always think it's important to walk your talk.
Yeah, hey, that is really great. And I mean, I assume you could also just scale it back based on performance, right? If you're really pushing the bounds and you're dipping under 60 or 144 or whatever your target is, you could start to pull some of those in dynamically to push up to that frame rate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing we're doing with this stuff is we are aiming to, particularly with mobile, you are memory constrained. Even what you're pushing out in your builds, you mentioned you had some issues with addressables the other day. Being very careful about what you're doing is also a big part of the way we approach things as well.
Nice. So what's this demo?
So this is the last one was a really low poly. This is a much higher poly demo, and this is again another demonstration of Storm. So this is a Gaia environment, and it's running our virtual terrain system. It's running Storm for vegetation, but I turned it all off just to give you a sense of, just by itself, this is what the scene's doing, which is already pretty good. So we've got our new terrain system with things like tessellation, mesh blending, a virtual texturing system, and also just massive scale. So one of the things I mentioned to you earlier was the use of imposter terrains to give your scene a sense of scale. So this is just in the distance there. This is just a Gaia terrain which has just been converted to imposter and dropped into the scene. But let's this is kind of, interesting in some ways, I guess. But I will now turn on Storm. So let's just pop in here and enable Storm, and it'll just start loading up. And I'm in the middle of, it's actually just loading in. You can actually configure this. Sometimes you want it all in at once. Sometimes as you're moving through a scene, you just want to stream in a little bit. So we've set it for the kind of slow coming in. And give it a second. Boom, now we're loaded. And even with a bunch of vegetation in here, we are still getting quite nice performance.
Yeah, it looks totally different, and the performance is still crazy. Wow, yeah. It went from a barren, empty place to you've got flowers and
so
like full-on deep vegetation. Nice.
And because we're focusing on performance, let me kind of dial in a few things here, right? So let's again go into our little runtime UX. Now this is not supposed to be pretty. It's more of a development tool, but you can see I'm drawing trees out to 1.5 kilometers, and I'm drawing my grass out to 100 meters. So I can go, let's draw it out to 183 meters. And let's just make this a bit smaller. You can actually get in and tweak it. And so I'm drawing more grass, but I'm still getting quite a good frame rate, especially considering I'm streaming for you. But then I can go, you know what, let's change the density of my trees. So let's double it. Boom. So it's just loading in. What it's doing is it breaks the world down into lots of tiles, and then it generates those tiles in memory, so that then it's just feeding a stream of data in at runtime. So we are now drawing a lot more vegetation, and we're drawing it out to 1.5 kilometers away. We could go, you know what, we could maybe even draw it out a bit further. And we're still maintaining quite a good frame rate. So sitting at 160, 170. And if you try to do this in Unity, it's very, very hard to do.
I've never seen that in Unity before, so that is amazing.
Yeah, it's capable of kind of doing all sorts of really, really cool stuff, and I'll give you a bit of a demo of that in a second. All right, so there's just some quick demos of what it can do, and the fact that this is something that's really cool too. I kind of really love this. So you're looking at your scene, you're trying to go, where is my performance? What is causing the issues here? So I'm just going to bring back my distances a bit and maybe decrease my grass a little bit. But I'm going to go into this little development thing here. I'm going to go show LOD debug. Boom. So what we're actually doing now is showing you what's going on with the LODs in your scene, so that you can get a sense of, you can kind of change the way your scene is running. So let's go to my LODs here, and let's go to our trees and experiment. You can see we're actually dynamically drawing more and more low poly trees. Yeah, so that LOD debug though, it's a very, very powerful feature, lets you see what's going on. The other thing you can do, which I think is rather cool at runtime, I'll actually just turn off our LODs, is we can go in and we can go, you know what, let's turn off the trees. And so here what we're doing is we're actually just drawing different assets, and you can go, you know what, let's look at where the rocks are going. Probably not a really good idea, it's not a lot of them. Let's try something like our grass and solo this grass. So these sorts of tools I think are really important when you're trying to work out where is the performance going in my scene. In fact, you can even go, how many instances are drawing and all this sort of stuff.
Oh, nice. So you can dig down to the exact piece of art that's causing the problem without having to go enable and disable all the stuff and keep retrying.
Yeah, so, one of these, if I just turn off this disable again and draw stuff and undo the solo, you can actually see, what am I drawing? This updates about once a second. So I'm drawing 11 million vertices, 24,000 instances in 50 draw calls. And you can see kind of where's my grass, where's my details, and so on and so on. You can see where the performance bottlenecks are in your scene. And particularly on a resource-constrained device, I think this is extremely valuable information.
Oh yeah, it's definitely useful. I've had to debug this stuff myself, and I'm always having to toggle them on and off and restart. And yeah, this seems helpful. Be able to speed that up quite a bit. I mean, but just being able to run everything fast too and show that much, I don't know. It's got me getting some crazy ideas right now.
It's super cool. It's kind of like you do stuff with Unity and you go, I wish I could make this richer and bigger. And this is part of what drove us to do this. And so now you can. We talked about accelerated versus non-accelerated a bit earlier with Gaia. Gaia does some smart things with vanilla Unity to make things run faster, but Storm actually accelerates it. We automatically build imposters, we restructure the content, and we really manage how that content's loaded in at runtime so that you're getting really good performance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press play, and I've actually turned off my Storm rendering at the moment. I can actually turn it on to get my vegetation. Give it a sec to load. Boom. So there's an island with some vegetation. And I'm going to turn that off again because I just love this next feature. That's a standard Unity Gaia scene. It's a standard Unity terrain. And that's actually something that's also a really important point too. When you're working with Storm, we try to work with you in the way that you're used to working. So if you're used to working with Unity Terrain, which a lot of studios, people know this system very well, they might use Gaia or another tool, doesn't matter, then you can continue working in that way. Storm will layer itself on top, and it can be quite intrusive, or it can sit back and you can kind of mix and match things. So let me just press play on this, and this is going to transform. So what you'll notice as I zoom out is that the terrain looks different now. And there's a lot of kind of a bunch of cool things going on here. So let's just try and get back a bit. First of all, we have baked the vegetation into the terrain. One of my big bugbears using Unity is you're going along and you've got some beautiful patch of, you've got your naked terrain. There's no sense of vegetation as soon as your grass stops drawing or your details. And then all of a sudden, you get this patch of flowers. So what you're seeing here is actually all of that being baked into the scene. So let me just go Window, and we'll go into Procedural Worlds, Storm, and we'll go into our Terrain Manager. So if we go into our features here, we've got these imposter features. And in fact, what we can do is we can blend our grass in and out and our trees in and out. So there is your naked terrain. But when we turn this on, we can now get a sense of, where's my trees, alpha, turn them back on. So it's sort of like, Google Maps. Google Maps, when you look at it, it's all satellite imagery and it looks fantastic until you get to ground level, then it looks terrible. So this kind of gives you that benefit. If you're doing something where you've got long distances, then this is going to allow you to do that. So let's turn them back on. Then let's turn on Storm. So we'll go to our Storm world here and I'll just pop that out the road, turn on our Storm World. Beaut. So now we've just added our vegetation back in. Notice how fast that was. And that's another really interesting aspect of Storm too. Because Storm, the idea is eventually we want Storm to be 100% runtime real time. And already a lot of the subsystems are runtime real time, but not all of them. Like the terrain gen, we're still kind of leaning on Gaia. So as I sort of go into this environment here and kind of go down to ground level, here's our lovely patches of grass and stuff. And let's just go into Storm and let's just, I used to it in this scene. Let's just drop our tree draw distance down, maybe our tree density down a bit. So we're drawing less trees so you can actually see this. So, and let's go our grass distance back in a bit. So you can actually see in the distance there, we've actually tuned it. We've actually tuned the grass and the flowers and stuff. Maybe this direction would be better to show this off. So down at ground level, as we're going along, and we've actually, even though the vegetation and so on isn't there, we're still drawing it. So let's go back, look at the grass under this tree there. Right, we're not drawing any more grass, but you still get a sense of the grass there, the trees in the distance.
That's the baked in on the terrain part.
Yeah.
They're just kind of blending that in. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
To make it so you can kind of see it. You can get it without having to render it because it's really just a couple pixels. Right? You just need the matching blur, right, without all the complexity.
Yep, and that is grass is one of the biggest. If you want to get really rich grass, that's one of the huge performance challenges in your scene because there's just so much of it. So this ability to kind of mix and match that is extremely powerful. So you can kind of see, and I actually turned it down. So if I go back to Window, Procedural Worlds, because I'm so used to doing demos and stuff, I always talk. Oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this. So I can actually blend my alpha back up again to make it a little bit more intense. You can see it pop up there.
Oh yeah, you turned it down just at the beginning there. This is really cool. Like it's always been one of the things that drove me nuts was that grass and almost everything from far away, it just looks terrible. The terrain starts to look weird, and then you got to pull things in, add fog, or do something else. And I think until now, I haven't seen anything else in Unity that let you do something like this, where the grass and just the terrain looks great at any distance, and you can run to it. It's like it's not just a fake thing. You can actually get out there, and it'll all come in high def. It's definitely very cool.
Yeah, we kind of love that feature. All right, now let me start from scratch. And this is kind of a quick demo of Gaia, and it's also a quick demo with Storm, and I'll show you some of the built features as well, because at the moment I've just kind of talked to the natural stuff. So let's go Window, Procedural Worlds, Gaia, Show Gaia Manager. Yeah. So I talked about as easy as 1, 2, 3. Well, here it is, 1, 2, 3. Gaia is wizard driven, so you can actually go in if you understand all of the different settings you're messing with and change the way Gaia does things for you. But we also have predefined settings where we've looked at how Unity works and kind of optimize that for you. You can choose your target platform, and then you can choose your target biome. I'm going to go to my Storm GDC biome, and a biome is basically a bunch of rules for how we procedurally add stuff to your scene. Then you can actually create Gaia manually, create your world manually. In fact, I was the person that invented the stamp, which is now part of Unity and Unreal and all of our competitor software. And this whole stamping concept, how that came about was I'd built 2 versions of terrain systems before Gaia, and both times when I gave that to artists, their eyes rolled back, and it was kind of, don't call me, I'll call you back. So I never heard from them again, and it was because the complexity of doing fractals and all this sort of stuff just went straight over most people's heads. The other challenge with fractals is you have no control. So one day I had this blinding flash of the obvious. What if you could treat a fractal just like any other prefab in Unity? And 9 months later, Gaia was born. And literally it did take me 9 months. But yeah, it was basically, let's capture the most interesting terrain feature and just allow you to plug it into your scene.
And the stamps, I feel like for artists, it's almost like a Photoshop brush, right? It's a very similar type thing. Like, hey, I made this, I'm going to replace this, use it and adjust it. But
yeah. The other thing I kind of commented earlier that we could do really, really large worlds. So in this create world thing here, and we've gone too far out for our draw distance, but I can actually go, let's make it 100 by 100, and it will literally go and build you 100 by 100 by 2 kilometer square terrain tiles. Now I'm just going to do that. It'll take a while to generate that. I always get this question, what, it's just too slow, it doesn't do all this stuff at a bazillion miles an hour. And I'm going, dude, it's all GPU accelerated. And when I first made my first 1 kilometer world in Unity, it took me 2 weeks. So it's kind of, it basically does a lot of heavy lifting for you. So let me just go back in here and let's just go and use our world designer. This will help, this will kind of automate a lot of this stuff for you. So I'll just go create world designer. So it's kind of a bit of a demo for Gaia, but we'll soon transition into Storm.
so this is good because I feel like a lot of people watching Gaia is probably enough for them. And then when they're pushing the edge, they'll jump into Storm.
Absolutely. And Gaia Pro VS, and that's what I'm demonstrating here, that is designed for, actually it's widely used across all industries, defense, all sorts of different things. But it's our asset store. It's kind of, it's the tool that has the widest mass appeal. And then Storm is really designed for people that want to get to that next level. And it's also priced a little bit more expensively than Storm. We have indie and enterprise pricing for it. But it's you're actually making money out of this and you want to get more customers and so on. That's when you kind of consider Storm. And then you never know.
Even a hobbyist should jump in and grab it, try it, and even the Gaia for Unity 6 is dirt cheap. So no reason not to get in there and start trying it, or at least grab the Pro and then Storm once your game is ready to start making some money and some serious money. But so you can tell everybody what you've generated here now. This is the 1 kilometer world.
No, this is actually 2 kilometers, and what I'm doing. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's 2 kilometers, does it? So what we do in this first part of this world designer is we allow you to get in and change the way your world works. These are kind of like broad brush strokes, and you can go, you know what, I want some more valleys and lakes, and maybe some more mesas, but less hills, for example. And then we can go randomize stamps. And what it's actually doing is using this as a high-level guide, and some rules that are sitting behind that, which you can customize all this stuff, right? You can use your own stamps, but it's basically just, rolling us another world. So let's try and get one. There we go. This has got some nice flat areas on it. I kind of like this. It's 2 kilometers. They're not too high. That'll give us a sense of perspective, which will make it feel larger. And let's just go and generate that world. So what Gaia's now doing is it's created the Unity terrain and it's textured it for us using that particular biome. It's also set up our scene and a bunch of tools in there. And the next thing I'm going to do is, again, so we created our world. Now we're going to create our runtime. Now you don't have to do this if you're already using, and by the way, I'm looking over here all the time because that's where you're on my other screen. You don't need to do this, but this is kind of just a handy setup. And let's go to Nordic for GDC because we made some nice lighting with the new Unity stuff.
This will give them like a play mode so they can fly through the
Yeah,
world.
that's right. This just gets you up and running straight away. So let's just create that runtime. Should have done that so you can see it. But there we go. We've now got the basic part of our world done and textured. And at ground level, this is kind of quite a nice environment. It's kind of interesting. So the next thing I want to do is, let me just pop this out the road, is I'm going to add, this is a new feature I forgot to tell you about. I'll just go back to it very quickly, and it's still talking about Gaia before we jump into Storm. But what Gaia does is it has your terrains. It's created our terrain for us, and this is just all stock Unity. Then we have our tools, and these, when you build your project, they don't go through to the build. But here is our session manager, so we track everything you're doing, so you can actually recreate it if you want to. And here is the biome. This is kind of the interesting thing here. So this thing is, it's got some texture spawners in here, and these are sets of rules which run from top to bottom. One of the cool new things that we've added in the Gaia Pro VS, let's just go add a mask here, and I'm going to add a poly mask. So I'm just going to go new. Usually, the idea behind Gaia and its rules-based biome system is you can apply it to any terrain. But what we're going to do now is actually customize where you can place things. So it kind of combines the generic do it everywhere with per scene polymask. So this is a new mask system, and I'm just going to go click, 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 draw. You can actually draw in masks, and if I was to spawn that again in Gaia, it would actually be limited to this mask, which is extremely powerful. And then I can go in here and just actually, edit. Yeah, so you can get in and edit your mask. And something that I quite like also with this is you can change its opacity, and then you can make it visualize always. So when you edit this, we can go, this is, the Dwarven Kingdom. Whoops. And I really love this because you can actually map out where things are in your scene, and then you can get in and you can actually just move it.
Cool. So you just slide it along, and then that area will be painted to. That is very cool.
Yeah,
that's a new feature.
Yes, that's just in the latest Gaia Pro VS, and you can add as many of these as you like to your scene, and then you can combine them with your biomes, and add them as masks. And actually, just for people that haven't seen it, let's just remove that mask here. Boom. And I've still left my mask in the scene, so let's just turn off visualize always. So it's still there. We're not using it anymore. But one of the things that, again, with this, what you see is what you get. With Gaia, if you want to know where masks are going, you can actually visualize them. And it basically, then when you go in and change things, you can actually, modify the stuff in real time and get a sense in real time, where is this rule going to affect my scene? Anyway, we're not getting to Storm. This is still Gaia. So let's go back to Storm. I'm going to get rid of that poly mask because it's just leaving a bit of extra stuff in my scene. Boop. All right. So we've created a nice world with Gaia, and we can press play, and Gaia's done all this work for us. And here we are, down here in our kind of empty world. So this is where we start to do some magic with Storm. So I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to go to Procedural Worlds, Window, Procedural Worlds, Storm. and I'm going to show my main window here. And here we've got a little in Unity tool, so I'm just going to go create storm world. Go boom. So now we have a storm world in our scene. There it is there. So the next thing I'm going to do is ingest this environment. And this is a workflow that I quite like, but of course, you know, you can do whatever workflow you like. So I'm going to go and drop my terrain into this. And I could import entire scenes, or I could just import a game object, for example. So I'm going to import my terrain and just go ingest. And you notice that took a long time. Boom. Now Storm knows about this terrain. So I'm going to pop into Storm here. And under my Storm world, we now have broken the world up into tiles and kind of know about what's going on here. So the next thing I'm going to do is add in what I call a layer remap. So Storm not only turns the world into tiles, but it then allows you to add data or layers to the world. And think of layers as things that influence where things are generated in the scene. So the next thing I'm going to do is let's add some feature sets. So feature sets are sets of rules kind of like we had with the biome. And this is the procedural aspect of Storm, and kind of the way I think about one of the workflows I kind of like to do is have your base world, add in your interesting gameplay features, and then just add in the rest. And I don't have to worry about the rest. So let's go in and add in the rest. So I'm going to go into some GDC grass, and boom, now we've got grass here. And then I'm going to go, let's go and add in some GDC dense grass, and you'll see the grass pop in another part of the environment here. It's a bit harder to see because it's a different color. There we go. And then let's add in some rocks, and just uploads again and updates. Boom. So now we've got rocks which are hugging the curvature of the terrain. Then let's add in some trees. And wait for Unity. Boom. So we've actually just nicely populated our environment with rocks and trees and so on and so on. Now, I love feature sets. I'm going to add, I wanted some color in this. So I'm going to add in some fields of color. Come on, Unity. Boom. Wait for it to draw again. And what's actually going on here is it's recalculating everything in real time in terms of where it's drawing. And we're also using a different rendering system inside of the editor because it doesn't support the same rendering systems you can do at runtime. So very, very quickly. And then the other thing I'll do it at runtime. So in a matter of minutes, and we've gone slower because I'm talking to you, we've created this rather awesome environment. Give it a second to load in. Boom. And it's running quite nicely and it looks great. And you know, it runs pretty well. So let's actually go and let's open our manager here. And we'll go into our utils and we'll add a runtime UI. And remember, I'm doing this at runtime. So there it is. It's running. There's a lot of grass here. Let's go in and configure what's going on here. So I can go, you know what? Should I really be drawing details out to 300 meters? So let's just maybe try and make this a bit bigger. In fact, let's just go full screen. Cool. So I'm running this in editor at edit mode. I'm drawing my grass out to 100 meters, my details to 300. Plants and trees, you know, might want to bring them back in a bit. You can see them actually updating. You know, we don't need 300 meters of colliders. So, you know, I can get in and change this stuff all at runtime. In fact, I'm going to bring my, there we go, my density of my grass is quite high. I can bring that down, and you can see we're starting to now climb our frame rate. And then, you know, what I'm going to do with my trees is, again, I like really, really rich trees. I can draw a lot more of them. And you can kind of get in and you get a sense of what's going on. And you're doing this at runtime. So
yeah, and this is in editor, so your frame rate's going to be double at least once you do a release build.
exactly. And that was what I was showing you before on that large environment. It's just how good
when
that
we're getting those big frame rates. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That was really quick too and fast. How easy you just kind of threw that in there. You gave it the game object, hit a button, and then pick the features that you want. And these features that you've selected, these already kind of come with Storm or some subset of them?
So some of them are ours. This is a lot of really beautiful stuff from Nature Manufacture. Go and get them. They're on sale as well in the asset store at the moment. And we've built about 10 different feature sets from different asset packs because we're more of a tools rather than an art company.
So you can use this with any art, though. It doesn't have to be, realistic. I mean, I love Powell stuff. Nature Manufactures great stuff, but you could use sci-fi stuff or any other type of theme and stuff. And in fact, before we run out of time, you also did buildings, right?
Yeah. So let me just go in and finish this off real quick. And I'm very appreciative of and thinking about time as well, because we kind of went down the Gaia thing, which is cool because people can get Gaia on sale. So here we go. We've got this rich scene here, right? So let's go in and now. So we've kind of talked about the natural world. Let's go to the built world. Kind of got too much stuff going on with vegetation, but doesn't matter. So I'm going to go into Storm and I'm going to go to my plugins. So Storm is a modular approach to building scenes as well. And so we have this plugin, which is our house builder. So let's go and drag that into my scene. Select this and go click, 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 click. And what you're actually seeing here, and I might just, and this is something I like to do as well. I'm going to turn off Storm while I'm doing this. So bloop. And let's go back to our house builder. And what you're seeing here is a visualization of how it thinks it wants the house to be. In fact, can't remember where I'm.
It's got names for the rooms labeled there too, right? I see bedroom, living room.
Yep. You can iterate and iterate, and you can see the different levels. This one doesn't have multiple levels. And then you can spawn. And let's just pop out of that. And what it's actually just done is, in this case, we fed in some really lovely Cinti assets, and it's just build a house that actually works. So yeah, coming back in. So we've actually generated a building using this rather cool tool. And if we wanted to, we could also generate interiors, which is extremely cool. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually take our building generator to the next level. Actually, before I go there, you'll notice I just laid out a polygon and we got a building. And we're using modular assets. So that means that building can easily be built in any style. You just give it a modular asset kit and boom, it just goes and builds it. And the reason we did it that way is that when you're doing geospatial, often the mapping data itself has, it's just a polygon. So there's a building here and here's the outline of the building. So we have, it's still very much alpha. Unfortunately, the guy we had working on it got very sick. But we have done a lot of work on geospatial import as well. The idea being you can bring in mapping in real time. And that's why we built it that way. But let's go to our city generator. And let's go and drop in a city generator. And let's go and iterate our roads. So what it's actually just done is it's looked at the terrain and worked out where your roads might want to go. And then if I hit the shift key, you can actually edit your roads. And we've got our major roads and then we've got our minor roads. So the next thing I'm going to do is iterate our plots. So what it's actually done is it's looked at your road structure and worked out where would our building plots go. So that same building generator is now going to be called by this thing. So let's actually just run it. Now, I've had some of my designers just build me one building and it took a day with interiors, all right? And I just went blip. Now, look at this environment and then I just hit that button. Boom. We just built an entire city with a click.
Much less than a day.
Yeah, much less than a day. Again, using modular configurations, kind of not very, just because we're focusing on dev, we haven't gone too much into the art, but, we've built this thing extremely quickly. And then finally, just the last thing I'll show you on this building generation stuff. And this is very much the dungeons are still in an alpha because we wanted to get everything else out first and make it all robust. But I'm going to drop in a dungeon generator and I'm just going to go iterate on that. Boom. And you can see, here's the
just
top.
add a dungeon with it,
There's a
literally
dungeon.
drag it out and hit click.
And then hit click again and hit click again.
And that at the beginning is the entrance to the dungeon, right?
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
created an entrance and a dungeon that you can go down into.
Yeah. And you can kind of see it every time I'm iterating, it's generating a new dungeon. But some things, this is kind of a cool feature too. What you can do with your dungeons is you can create boss rooms, and they're custom designed rooms. And your dungeon can build out the rest of the structure, but always keep your boss room. So let's go and have a look inside of the dungeon. We've got our little entrance here, and of course this can be anything you want. I'm going to turn off the runtime, so the water and everything else, because you would usually have systems that would turn that off as you go down. But let's go and look inside this dungeon. So we go down in here, and here is a big box in the middle of your corridor here. But let's go along this corridor and ignore the detritus. We've got multi-layer rooms and multiple entrances above and below, and you can go down here, and eventually, let's go and find it, we'll get our way to our boss room. And now we've got this really cool room that's been designed. If I press play and went down here, we'd have beautiful haze and all that sort of stuff.
Put a boss down there.
Yeah, exactly. It's a dungeon, right? It's designed to get you lost. So let's turn.
That is really cool extra feature. I was not expecting you just go add a dungeon with a single click.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just kind of finish up with turning this thing back on and see it all running together. Probably shouldn't have put so much grass in there, but I just do love the grass. So let's hit play here. And maximize this. I'm on Unity. We're just still loading vegetation. I do tend to go nuts with vegetation.
Yeah, it was very, very dense grass. It'd be hard to walk in.
So I'm inside of the building, but here I am. Here's my my city building that I just created. My lots and lots of grass, and just kind of zoom along here. This is a Gina Road. We also modified this so that it could work with I can't remember the name of it, but there's another really nice road system on the asset store. And where's our dungeon? It's around here. There it is. So go for a wander over to our dungeon here. There's our dungeon, and then here's our little low poly building. I won't demonstrate it to you, but we can also shape the terrain as well. You notice that automatically when we add things, it's automatically masked out of Storm. So yeah, in a nutshell, it is capable of doing large worlds. It supports different workflows, works for mobile and desktop, and that's about 3 years of work.
It is very, very cool. And I feel like for people that want to build something with it, it's not 3 years of work. Like you did the hard work for them, and now they just have to drop in things and slide some sliders around. It's very, very impressive. So I'm just really excited about this. And I know some people were worried about the loss of Unity's terrain update, but I think this will definitely make up for that. It gives you the ability to do all that stuff and a lot of stuff that you just really can't do in Unity. So if people want to get a hold of, anything other than Storm, they just go straight onto the asset store, right, and go grab them. A lot of these things are on sale. But if they want to get a hold of Storm, what should they do?
So to get a hold of Storm, come to our website and products, Enterprise Storm. We say Enterprise, but it's kind of, it's just the way it's labeled. So go in here, it'll tell you a little bit about what Storm does, and it's free. You can just register your interest. Now, because we're a small team and we're just like, we would get swamped, literally everybody who sees it kind of goes, wow, can I have it? We're taking interests at the moment, and we'll gradually expand this over the next month or so as you know, all of our training material comes online and all that sort of stuff. But it's a crazy powerful system. You can do a lot with it. And then the last thing I wanted to say is our world building bundle is on sale at the moment. It's compared to what you get, it was already a 30% discount on top of our tools. So there's about $500 or more, like $600 worth of value you can get for $224 at the moment. And it's got a lot in it. It's got Gaia Pro VS, which I just demonstrated, Gina, which is our road and level designer, and it does rivers as well. GTS, which is our terrain shader. So I showed you some of the terrain shading capabilities of Storm. GTS is also very powerful, so instantly boosts your terrains. It's interesting. I put a lot of time and money into this thing, ambient sounds. A lot of indies never get to the stage of adding sound to their environment. But
you play with mute on, right?
Yeah, so that's just kind of this really cool looping and positional sound system we added. Pegasus, we make this stuff all the time. Pegasus is our fly-through generator. You know, you can use Cinemachine and all that stuff, but I found that I found it clunky. So this is just click, click, click. You've got to fly through. Sector, if you're doing mobile, that does world streaming for mobile. And then we have these mountain packs where we've designed these really cool stamps. So that's like, just that alone, Gaia Pro VS is $199. So you're getting all this other stuff for pretty much the same price. So yeah, that's us. That's our news.
It's definitely a great deal and some really awesome tools. I think everybody should check it out. If you haven't tried Gaia before, you're missing out, especially anything with terrains. And if you're building anything big and you've got a real game going out, you should check out Storm. And thanks again, Adam, for joining us. This is really, really awesome, and it was really cool to see the new tech and to see the new capabilities coming into Unity that you're adding. So thanks again for that. Any final words before we go?
Yeah, just thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the stuff we're working on. We're super, super excited. We have, I've kind of bet the company on Storm, so I hope it sells well. So yeah, buy our stuff. We have a dedicated full-time support person, so if you're just getting started out, there's somebody to help you.
All right. Well, thanks again. Yeah, everybody go check it out. We'll put links in the description. Go to the Procedural World site and register your interest for Storm and go grab the Gaia Pro bundle that's out now. And we'll see you. Yeah. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks again.
I think that's your call to go back and spend some time with your kids.
She